But what do we do? Oh my God, things are so bad. They're destroying everything. The fascists are in power and they're tearing apart the government. And like, what do we do? Okay, well, should we have a revolution? Should like everyone be Luigi? Maybe blue shell economics will work. Maybe we should have like a general strike. Maybe we should all get armed. Maybe we should like all be gardening. Like, oh my God, should I volunteer? Should I donate to bail funds? What if I don't have any money? Should I meet my neighbors? What if I can't really host because I just live in a room? Like, what do I do? Okay, first off, take a breath. That's important. Take a breath. Take a breath with me. That's not going to solve fascism, but it might help you feel better for a second. And that's important because you got to put your own mask on first. I'm going to tell you what I've learned. I've been away for a few months. I haven't been posting much. And I've learned a bunch of stuff. It's not too much more complicated than listening to indigenous people. So I'll tell you what I've learned. So the issue, as I see it, is that we have lots of ideas about what to do. But I saw a post recently, I put it in my story. It said, the first step isn't reading Marx. The first step is caring about people. But I have seen for at least 20 years now, memes that are like, I don't know how to tell you to care about people. You know, before you go to a party, you're like, I'm not going to talk about politics. And then 2 drinks in, you're like, so Steve, tell me why you hate poor people. Like, right? So how do we do this? Because I see leftists all the time being like, no, it needs to be revolution. Like it needs to be an armed revolution. That's the only way we've ever gotten power. And I would like to just try it. I would like to step back from that for a second and say like, we've never won power. Like the seat of empire right now is America. And before America, it was Britain. Before Britain, it was like sort of feudal Europe, kings and landlords and stuff, the remnants of the Roman Empire. And before that, it was the Roman Empire. And before the Roman Empire, it was all kinds of like little kingdoms and city-states and stuff all around the world. And that's just Europe. That's just Europe. But I mean, globally, the Soviet Union lasted 80 years and was destroyed by the seat of empire. So what do? I think we need to connect. I think we need to feel and we need to connect. And I think that's where I've landed. And I've gotten that from reading a number of things from a number of different indigenous cultures and sort of like people who feel deeply. And here's what I mean. We can protect ourselves with our tools. Master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. Like maybe an armed revolution will overthrow the seat of power for a little bit, but then what? You know, how do we hold on to that? Well, the communists have their idea, socialism, right? A dictatorship of the proletariat. The anarchists feel like that's just another hierarchy. We have to go straight to just being anarchists. But like, how? How do we convince people to act together? It's, I think, connection. It's feeling and it's connection. We need to connect with our bodies. That means feeling your emotions. That means, playing an instrument. That means meditating. That means like feeling your breath at your nose when you meditate or doing body scans. That means it could look like lots of stuff. People play sports, maybe not a sport that makes you really angry at people, and I'll talk about, community, but do stuff with your body. Go for a walk. I go for a little 20-minute walk every day, and then I do some exercise. I'm 35. Exercise is not voluntary for me anymore. So connect with your body. Connect with the natural world. Look, it's the moon. Isn't she so pretty? The first quarter was just the other day. I follow the moon all the time now. It's a guardianship practice. It keeps me grounded. I observe the wisdom that's embedded in the natural cycles of the moon. Every month, I feel an embodied sense of time. My time blindness is like going away because of it, because I observe natural cycles, observe the seasons. I go for a walk every morning, connecting with my body, and I can observe the seasons, and I can see the moon if the moon is out in the morning. Connection with community. And they all overlap. I went for a walk last night and met one of my neighbors. I don't know many of my neighbors. I've long known that I should be meeting my neighbors, but I didn't know how. I've seen people suggest like you could host a dinner, but like I don't live in a place where it's easy to host. So that's not the easiest thing. Like I could go door to door and meet my neighbors, but it's a little unnatural. The moon. I went for a walk last night and the moon was out and I was like, oh, it's beautiful. I love the moon. And There's a guy, like one of my neighbors up the street was out smoking, and I was like, did you see the moon? Just walked by him, and I was like, you see the moon? And he's just immediately down for a conversation, right? And he started telling me like, oh yeah, you see the clouds are a little bit lower, it's a lower pressure system, and like that means one of two things. It's either going to storm or it's going to get really, really clear and cold. And I was like, how do you know that? And he was like, I did survival training. Like, if there's a zombie apocalypse, like you come to my door and you just buzz number one, and I'm the guy who's going to get you out. And I'm like, I need to meet more of my neighbors. But I did that with the moon. So you see how they overlap. I've made a bunch of friends in my neighborhood, not like on my street, but in my neighborhood, I've met tons and tons of people just pointing out the moon. Oh, look at the moon. You see, it's going to be full in a couple days. Like, it'll be clear. Just mention little things about the moon. I just appreciate the moon. And other people, I've noticed, I've pointed out the moon to a number of people now. And everyone that I've done that for has just been grateful. I've had people where I point out the moon and they're like, oh, is it okay if I stand with you for like 15 minutes or so and just like watch it? Like, yeah, of course. And I'm meeting people in my neighborhood. I'm making new friends. Like, that's a good way to have community. But what I mean by community is someone that you can talk to about what's going on in your life, just candidly, because there's a lot going on in all our lives. And it's important that we have people to talk to. It's important that it's not your partner. And it's important that it's not someone you would like to have sex with. You need to have a roster of people that you can tell about your life, because, as they say, a burden shared is a burden halved, and a joy shared is a joy doubled. So it's important. I know that a lot of us are traumatized. If you're traumatized in a specific way, it can be nice to find people who are traumatized in the same way as you. You know, if you're like neurodivergent, maybe good for your general safety in the relationship to find other neurodivergent people to be friends with. Not that I'm saying to segregate ourselves by neurotype. All I'm saying is, like, find people that you're able to feel safe with. You know, extend vulnerability slowly as you feel safe to do so. If you're punished for that by the person, if they react strongly, that has to do with them, and just have a boundary there, right? But do try to find people that you can feel really safe with, to talk about this stuff with, because there's a lot going on. It's a difficult world, and it's not getting easier. And the last one is ancestors. Root yourself in your ancestors. If you root yourself with your ancestors, that could be challenging. Maybe your ancestors were all eradicated by the empire. Many of mine were, right? I'm Irish. Yeah, 5/8 of them came over during the hunger, the potato famine. They say God brought the blight and the British brought the famine. So my ancestors are not connected to the earth. And so connection with ancestors to me is a little more complicated, but, you know, all that ancestral wisdom still lives in the land. Every ancestor that I've ever had, back to the first like single cell weird little thing that evolved from not being life into being life and started replicating itself. Every single living thing, from my parents to my grandparents all the way back, if they had eyes, could look up and see the moon, same as me. And so connection with my body, that's something all the ancestors would have had. They all had bodies. They knew what it felt like to live. They had connection to the moon and the natural cycles of the earth. They had connection to community. They felt these things. And then there's, genealogy. There's sort of ancestry. There's all that stuff. There are lots of ways to connect with ancestors. You can meditate on them. You can always just ask for their support. I like to think of my ancestors as not having their trauma after they die, so that they're exclusively happy to see me. Think of how proud Luigi Mangione's ancestors must be. Anyway, this is what I've encountered. This is what I've learned, and this is what I think could be valuable to building the world that we'd actually like to see, instead of just reproducing cycles of violence. Root yourself in your body, your ancestors, community, and the natural world. I do it all the time. I've been practicing it for 4 months now, since I figured out that this is sort of like the thing. It always helps me feel better. It always helps me feel more grounded. It helps me make videos like this. It's not in itself going to defeat fascism, but it is something that we can offer that the oppressor cannot. Because if they told people to start feeling more deeply, let's just say every Zionist in the world overnight felt everything really deeply all of a sudden. Well, that's the end of that colonial project, right? What happens if all of a sudden, like, every person in Congress in the US just felt things really deeply, and were really deeply connected to the earth and their bodies and their ancestors and the natural world and future generations? Like, it changes overnight. It's hard to be a cop and go tear down a homeless encampment if you feel things really deeply and you feel like we're all connected. So that's the thing that I think we can offer. I have gotten this from a number of different, like, I've seen this in places. The pattern recognition's been going off lately since my trip to Ireland. Those are the 4 places where you can root yourself: your body, the natural world, ancestors, and community, in order to ground yourself. And those are the things that we can offer other people that they do want. They may be resistant to it, like men and feelings, you know, like people are going to have different resistance to different things, but, you know, seeding a little connection helps us see the light in each other's eyes. And that's going to be good for us. And I think that that could be a way for us to genuinely move towards escaping systems of domination rather than just like reiterating them over and over and over and over. The Maori in New Zealand, I saw a Richard Dawkins video where he was complaining that like Maori ways of knowing, I think the word is mataranga, and Maori ways of knowing are being taught side by side with science as like equal. And Richard Dawkins and a lot of the science community, science people who like place their faith in science, are pushing back against this because they're like, no, science is for like studying physical like things that can be replicated in a lab, and like it's for proving objective truth. And I think that they could soften that a little bit. It certainly rubs me in the wrong colonial way. But also, I just want to ask the question of what happens if we do see science as like science is here and maybe ethics is over here, right? And they're just separate things, and you can learn this if you want, and you can learn this if you want. And you learn science, but you don't learn ethics. Well, then you can take the credibility of science and misuse it, right? If you take all the power of science, all the power that science can unleash, and you don't connect it to, like, rooted in your body, rooted in the earth and our connection to the earth, how we evolved from the earth and are technically then a part of it, and deeply connected with what happens to each other in community, and deeply connected with our ancestors and future generations, ancestors up and down, well, then science can be misused. That's how we get race science. That's how we get right-wing economics, or like neoliberal economics. Like the idea of any economic system that's like, I don't know, some people need to be poor. I don't know, maybe the Irish, if they didn't want to die in a famine, shouldn't have had so many kids, like, while stealing their food at gunpoint. Guys, come on. That's how we get race science. That's how we get Nazi Germany using science for all of the horrible stuff they used it for, right? That's how we misuse science, because we're not rooted in this connection to our bodies, each other, the earth, our ancestors. And if we have that connection implicit, if science isn't siloed, but it's like a part of the whole part of existence, and to learn science, it needs to be deeply embedded in ethics. It needs to be deeply embedded in this feeling of connection. Science becomes a lot safer. We all become a lot safer. We all become a lot safer from those who would misuse science. In New Zealand, they're attempting to teach those things side by side, and I am seeing a science backlash to that. So this is where I'm at with stuff, and I wanted to share this because I think it's of a lot of value. I'm sorry the video is so long, but I'm going to leave you with the moon because I think it's beautiful and I want to share it with you. There's the moon. Where's the moon? What? Can I zoom in a little? Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Every ancestor you've ever had has looked up and seen that moon, unless they were blind. Sorry. Take care of yourselves.